So every time you think Tubi is making good moves and putting out good stuff, you know, I don't know. I feel like every time you think they're making things that are good, they have like an answer right after, right? So like we watch Lowlifes, and then I watch Guess Who, and then we watched Invasive,
Yeah.
and then we watched Killer Body Count. Funny enough, we had someone in our comments who was like praising this film, and oh boy, if you were that person, you're not going to like what we have to say. This is from the director of the Slumber Party Massacre remake, which we hated.
Yeah.
So if you were a fan of the Slumber Party Massacre remake, you might enjoy this.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it is very similarly toned. Mm-hmm. And I want to get that out of the way up front. This style that this director has is not for us.
Yeah.
Right? So if that style works for you, she also did the Banana Splits movie. If that style works for you, then I think that this will probably be a win for you. But it doesn't work at all for us. I don't have any interest in seeing anything else this person makes. I feel like, but then again, you never know. Because, Poor Things was my favorite film of last year. And I didn't like anything Yorgos did before that.
Yeah.
That I'd watched. I watched like 3 movies in a row. And I was like, I don't like this guy's style. It does not work for me. I don't know why I keep going back. And then he made a movie with Emma Stone. And I was like, why'd you have to make it with Emma Stone? Now I have to see it. And then I went and it was like the greatest fucking thing I saw all year.
Yeah.
So you never know. But regardless, I don't think that this director is anywhere near on the level of Yorgos as a filmmaker. Anyway, this is about a girl who gets sent to this, what? What would you consider this place?
It's kind of like a
It's
rehab.
like yeah. Okay. It's like it's almost like a conversion therapy.
It's like a conversion rehab Catholic thing.
But for sexual addiction.
Sex addicted teens.
It's not even sex addiction. It's just they don't want them having sex,
regular,
period.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing this movie does not do well. It does not make these kids seem like overtly promiscuous. They seem like every horny teenager I've ever seen in my entire life. But maybe that's the point, right? They're just there because they're random horny teenagers.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with that. That's not my problem with the fucking film by any stretch. Because like when this started, I was kind of into it. I was like, okay. And hilariously, as much as I hated this film, and to the point where it literally kept me up last night, I was in bed recycling this film. It lived rent-free in my head for hours. And not a good experience. Some people might be like, well, it made an impact. It's better than you not even remembering it. Yeah, but like being tortured with what you hated for hours, it's like my brain. What it really came down to, honestly, is that I wanted to make sure I could put into words perfectly how much I didn't like this movie, and I just couldn't come up with the right words, and I'm still like, I hope I can say this correctly. So here's my attempt. But the one thing I will say before is, ironically, this does have my favorite, like, humorous moment of the year, possibly. And it's nothing. It's a nothing throwaway 2-second line. But for some reason, Kaylee and I have said it to each other like 15 times since we watched this movie. So if nothing else, we got that. We were just bummed that it has to be attached to a movie we really, really, really did not enjoy.
When it started off, I thought that it had a pretty comedic tone. I was kind of like, okay, like it's silly. It knows it's silly. But then there's just a lot of things like, and this is something I rarely feel like we say, but I found that the characters made dumb decisions, or rather that the characters were written really dumb. Like, their reactions to things were very unbelievable. And I do think that the movie is an attempt at a parody.
Yes.
It just has these moments where it is like mildly taking itself seriously.
But that's
which is
it,
also
right?
what it's trying to do. So really, I feel like for us, like you kind of already said, I think we just don't vibe with this director's style. I think that some people will really enjoy this.
Yeah.
But there was just so many things that we were like, what, really? One thing is that I feel like, and I think you probably were wanting to say this, but for a film that's like really hyper focused on sex, it's not really showcased in like, I think it should have been funnier. Like, I think the sex stuff should have been like used for laughs, and it could have been explicit and used for laughs. But as it is, I just feel like it's kind of just very safe.
Well, the movie's like kind of trying to poke fun at exploitive films without being exploitive.
Right.
I hate that.
I think that's
what I don't.
Really common
and I said this to you. That's what I don't like about Scream.
Yeah, which this is nothing like Scream, and I definitely disagree with you on that. But I understand like what you mean by it.
You don't disagree with me on what I'm saying about that, though, because Scream is tame.
Well,
yes.
Yeah. So I don't really want. It sucks because I don't want to get into like a conversation about Scream. But I think while Scream might be tame compared to other slashers, I think that where it maybe lacks in that department, it makes up for in the writing and the characters and all these other things. For me and for people that really love it as, you know, a film and as a franchise.
But it's parodying or it's a satire of slasher movies. But it has no nudity. It has no gore. It just feels so watered down, and that's what I fucking hated about this movie, and that's what I hate about Scream. They're just so watered down, and I like exploitive films when they're meant to be, and this is meant to be. But go on. Sorry.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I disagree with you on Scream, and so I don't want to talk about it in this review.
I know you love Scream. There's nothing wrong with that.
But I think that this one, it does like. I think it could have benefited from maybe leaning into that side more, but I do think that was part of the point as well. So it's hard. I didn't really like any of the characters. I found them to be kind of annoying, and this director does this thing, they did it with the Slumber Party Massacre remake, where they kind of try to flip the whole like women are sexualized in films, in horror films, like now I'm gonna sexualize the men, but I don't feel like it's done that well. I don't feel like it's done successfully. I don't think I've seen a movie where men have been like objectified the way women have in horror movies, and I would love to see something like that just to like get the different perspective. And I think that it would be a really powerful perspective to like give to the world, to be like, this is how women can feel when they watch, you know, movies where they're being killed all the time, like, and like used for their bodies. And I think you can do that with men, totally.
Yeah.
But I just don't think it's done here. Like, there's just like in Slumber Party Massacre, I think, well, not just like it, but there's a scene where like the guys are like shirtless and they're all like, but that's it. Like, there's nothing else. And I'm just like, it kind of, the whole point of like the shirtless shower scene with women is that you're seeing their breasts. And when you have shirtless men, that's not a revelation.
You
like,
you
dicks. Need to show their, that's how you show their vulnerability in the way that the women in the shower are supposed to be vulnerable. Yeah. Like, they need to be naked, and like we need to see that they're naked, like really see it. Because it's also sexualizing them by showing their genitalia. So anyway, but
I agree.
As far as the story goes, like it's a very goofy story. I just didn't like it. I mean, like it was honestly fairly entertaining to watch, but it wasn't like as entertaining.
It was entertaining in a very frustrating way.
Yeah. It wasn't like a really good entertaining, and it wasn't a B movie entertaining for us, but I think that for a lot of people it will be for them.
The movie kind of goes for this like But I'm a Cheerleader storyline, which I'm a big fan of. But I'm a Cheerleader. If you haven't seen it, with Natasha Lyonne, definitely recommend it. It's not horror, but she's sent to like a gay conversion camp when she's not. Anyway, I'm not going to give it away, but that's a really fun movie and definitely a social commentary, and I think you could say something like that here as well, but I feel like this film just has very little to offer in anything that it's trying to say whether it's against, conformity or religion being pushed on you or the state of horror or like the tropes of horror or the sexualization of women and we're taking the power back and flipping the dynamic. Like all of that stuff is just either non-existent or so mishandled. And it is going to come down to if you buy into the style. The film goes from like serious to silly to serious to silly. And it's trying to be like a parody of old bad movies where this girl should be focusing on getting the fuck out of the situation. But she's decided to stop and look at a dick. Or like the girl, everything is falling apart and she is now stopping to try to have sex. And it's like, but it's just for some reason, it's the way she presents her films where there's such a tonal disconnect. And the like tone is the joke. That's the humor. That's the parody. That's the satire. Is the tone. But I don't vibe with it.
Yeah.
So it's all about the tone.
Yeah.
And if you vibe with the tone and you're like, I get what they're going for here. Like, yeah, people are like this in those movies. But this is something we've talked about. Those movies that they're parodying already entertaining for that reason. I don't need you to make a movie pointing it out. Like, we get it.
Yeah.
We're horror fans.
Right.
We grew up watching this shit. I've watched the movies where they should be getting out the fucking house, but they decided to stay and watch girls get naked. I've watched the movie where, there's no way they'd be having sex right now, but they stopped to have sex. And it's hilarious because they're being so serious with it.
Yeah.
And this movie's like trying to emulate that and be like, I'm aware that this is what's supposed to be happening and I'm keeping it serious because these old movies would keep it serious and that's funny. And it's like, but we already have those movies.
Just like the tropes from the 80s movies, like those are all kind of outdated. Like you said, we already have those movies, and I feel like horror nowadays, like we have a new set of tropes and like idiosyncrasies that people like to poke fun at. And also a lot more horror is like they take themselves seriously and they try to like break past those stereotypes. So it is kind of like, I mean, you can make whatever you want to make, but it is sort of like we don't really have the 80s like movies anymore in any genre, really. You know what I mean? Like we've kind of evolved. There's definitely dumb movies still that exist, but they're not like, I feel like the ones that are like being made and being popularized aren't the same movies that were popular in the 80s, if that makes sense.
It just feels very outdated.
Yeah.
Like I think, we went through that. I mean, Scream did it 20 years ago, right? Like, you're poking fun at the genre. Like, we did that. The 80s has been gone forever. Like, yeah, I mean, as you said, it would be cool to see a movie like this poking fun at nowadays movies.
Yeah.
Like,
Modern
this just
horror.
seems like low-hanging fruit that's so been there, done that. And I'm just tired of it.
Yeah.
The whole, like, trying to poke fun at how stupid 80s movies are. I'm just not a fan of it anymore. I never really was, to be completely honest. But I'm like, if I wasn't over it then, I'm fucking beyond over it now. So this is just not my style or brand. I would put this on for 20, 30 minutes. And if you're vibing with it and you're laughing and having a good time and you're like, what are these clowns talking about? Then stick with it and have at it. Oh, and I also want to point out, this movie is an hour and 50 minutes.
Yeah, it's a long one.
What the... why? Why is this movie so long? All right, guys.